I sell t-shirts, do 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 do. Strategy, motherfucking strategy. So I just got done watching an interview with Michael Moore on Democracy Now! He was on there talking about the healthcare bill and what a disappointment the Democratic Party is. Now, after complaining about the Democratic Party for the duration of the first segment of his interview, in the second half, Amy Goodman, being a good journalist, put Michael Moore on the spot, asking him about his decision to bend down on one knee and ask Ralph Nader not to run in 2004. Michael Moore pontificated for a bit, and then started to contradict what he said in the first segment, saying how the game is rigged for third-party candidates, and that the Democratic Party is the only option, and that people should vote Democrat and get involved in the Democratic Party. And since we have a one-party duopoly, try to make one of those parties an actual second party. This is typical dyed-in-the-wool partisan hackery. I've been working in electoral politics for the past 10 years. I've spent most of it in the Democratic Party. Now, there is something to be said about getting involved with an organized party at the state or municipal level, because from there you can press to amend the state platform so that it reflects a progressive policy agenda, as well as run progressive candidates for office. In fact, my hometown has some of the most progressive candidates in the entire state's government, and they're all Democrats, many of whom I volunteered time with to help them get elected. Now, as a formerly active delegate to the Democratic State Party, I can tell you that the state party is filled with progressives as well. However, once you get to national, the game is rigged, and there you're going to find a much nastier, much more corrupt machine politics at play. But let's back up on this issue of partisanship and talk about strategy. What is a political party at its most fundamental level? It's simply an organization. A political party is nothing more than an organizational tool, a vehicle for getting signatures to get candidates on the ballot and to get people out of their homes and voting on election day. Now, a political party may have a set of ideals that it claims to espouse, but in reality, these don't really matter. It's up to individuals, be they candidates or supporters, to put their own ideals into practice, be that through legislation, campaigning, or running their own personal lives. And that can be done at the government level, either as a candidate through legislation or as a citizen through lobbying. Now here's where Michael Moore and I disagree. Yes, it's good to be active in the Democratic Party. I think people should be getting involved with organized politics at every level, and in any party that they can. You should get inside of the machine of the political establishment and see how it works. Learn the rules of the game. Find out how a functional campaign is supposed to be run. The Democrats are a good party, but so are the Republicans. What you should do is ignore the partisan lines and open your mind to see that there are things that are more broad than partisan lines. Policy agendas. What policy agendas do you want to work towards? This is the reason that I had no problem at all in supporting Ron Paul's run for the presidential nomination of the GOP. He brings forward a lot of good issues. Granted, there's a lot I disagree with as well. But he was also the only anti-war GOP candidate. He was also the only anti-bailout candidate in the GOP. He was also the only candidate in the GOP who supported ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, if he had gotten the nomination, we would have seen a somewhat progressive, anti-war Republican running against a pro-war Hillary Clinton or Obama. That would have really put the lie to the charade that the Democratic Party puts on, their false progressivism or faux-gressivism. Every citizen should get out there and start working on campaigns, be they issue campaigns or electoral campaigns. Learn how to run a successful campaign. That way you can get the government to do what you want it to do. Until then, we have to ask politicians to give us what we want. We're like little kids who have to ask our parents to zip our coats for us. Other strategies! Let's say you're a progressive, but you live in a solidly blue state, and the Democratic Party is like a 500-pound gorilla, and your Democratic Party is extremely corrupt and pro-corporate. What are you supposed to do? Register as a Republican and run in the Republican primary. The Republican Party is actually shrinking nationwide when it comes to active participation by its members. Even more so in blue states. The primaries have so little participation that if you could get your name on the ballot, you could bring 50 friends to a caucus meeting and win the nomination for a state seat. Then you can run as a progressive against a corrupt pro-corporate Democrat and send delegates to the Republican State Convention to amend their platform to reflect a more progressive policy agenda. When you actually go to run for office, you'll get the votes of all the Republican hacks because you have an R next to your name. You'll get votes for independents because you're not an asshole like a typical Republican, and you aren't corrupt like a typical machine Democrat. I assume, anyway. So Michael Moore talks about the Democrats as being the lesser of two evils. Well, if the GOP is evil, why not go and attack that evil directly? Infiltrate the most evil of the two and take it over. Neutralize it so it's not evil anymore. Along the same line of thinking, Ralph Nader should run in the Democratic primaries of the state of Connecticut for Joe Lieberman's seat. Now, Ralph Nader could easily win the primary nomination for the Democratic Party, and then he would be running as an establishment party candidate against a spoiler third-party candidate, who would be the incumbent. What incredible cosmic justice that would be! The partisan hacks in the DNC would shit a brick. They'd have no idea what to say about it. They wouldn't be able to say anything without contradicting what they've previously said about Ralph Nader. Now, the common theme throughout all of these strategies is that in order to hold politicians accountable, you need to be able to threaten their access to power. No amount of protesting, organizing, chanting, sign-waving is going to have any sway over a politician unless you can turn that organizing into a way to threaten their access to that seat of power. Until you can threaten a politician's chances of being re-elected, they have no reason to pay any attention to you. Thankfully, here in America, we have the vote. The vote is the primary means by which we threaten politicians' access to power. It's how we get politicians to pay attention. This is why it's important to have third parties run, and for them to keep doing party building, and for them to keep bringing light to important issues that are either marginalized or only paid lip service to by the two-party duopoly. Now, if a candidate whom you seek to unseat wins by a narrow margin that was made even more narrow by a third party, that candidate, should they want to be re-elected, will have to pay attention to that third party's platform. They'll have to pay some credence to your policy agenda. Now, if a third party can garner 2% of the electorate and the margin is 1%, that third party is a threat. If your policy agenda is ignored by both parties, then simply keep building party support. Keep campaigning and keep building support for your policy agenda until the next election. And that's something important to keep in mind. Just because you lose an election doesn't mean that the fight's over. The close of one election season is simply the opening of the next. Regroup. Learn from your mistakes, learn from your successes, and get to work on the next one. We have not only the right, but the duty to self-governance. Get to work.